Hey kids, I think this thing's working right. Yep. Hey, just gather around. We're having another story time here. Going to do another Bible lesson with you guys, so that'll be fun. So come sit around your TV here, and we'll have a little bit of a lesson this morning or this afternoon or midnight, whenever you're watching this. We're going to look at Mark 12 verses 30 to 31, the two greatest commandments. Do you know what they are? Hmm. Yeah. Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. So from Mark 12, 30, 31, it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. Second commandment is this: love your neighbor as yourself. These are the two greatest commandments. So I'm kind of review that a little bit about loving your neighbor, right? So what does loving your neighbor mean? We're kind of going to go through which, well, and be socially distant. That's even harder, right? Well, do the thing where I show you a couple different characters and see what you think they would be an easy neighbor to love or a hard neighbor to love. Okay, and then we'll talk about. Here's our first neighbor. What if our neighbor is this guy? Can you see who that is? Huh? Yeah, it's Barney the dinosaur. He seems like a friendly enough fella, so I suppose he would be pretty easy to love. What about this guy? You know who that is? Good. Yep, it's Barney Fife. Another Barney. Nip it in the bud. I would think he might be a little bit harder neighbor to have because he's a little bit, I don't know, a little bit silly sometimes. How about this for your neighbor? What if this guy was your neighbor? Yep, Winnie the Pooh. I suppose we could just take him some honey. That would show an act of love. Um, oh, he just looks so friendly, doesn't he? What about this guy? That guy looks a little harder to love. I bet you don't know who that is. This is actually John the Baptist. You know they took pictures of him back in the day? No, actually, we could probably take him some honey too, right? But I don't know. If a guy like this lived next to me, I may have a little bit of trouble. I don't know. He looks a little weird to me. By the way, I got a little riddle for you. What do Winnie the Pooh and John the Baptist have in common? They both have the same middle name. Think about it. All right. Which of these do we do with our neighbor? Do we hate our neighbor? Boy, I hope not. But I've heard of some people that really hate their neighbor. Do we ignore our neighbor? Sometimes we do. Do we just endure our neighbor? That means just like, all right, we'll put up with our neighbor. They don't bother us. We won't bother them. Maybe. What about like your neighbor? Yeah. A lot of times we can say, I like my neighbor. But here's the challenge for us. It says to love our neighbor. So to love our neighbor is to actually take some sort of action. All these other things can be kind of nebulous, kind of hard to see that you really do care. So loving our neighbor is what we're going to be talking about. Here's some more neighbors. What if this guy was your neighbor? Who is he? Mario. Yay. I suppose we could go karting with him, right? Probably pretty easy to get along with him. What about this Mario? That's Mario Andretti. He drives Indy cars. That'd be kind of fun to live next to him, maybe. Might be a little noisy, though. How about this one? Ah, Big Bird. Good. You guys know your characters here. Oh, he looks so friendly. He's got that little bear in his lap, and we could all live on Sesame Street and sing songs together. What about this? You know what that is? That's a big bird. This is a peacock. You know what peacocks, you think a peacock would be an easy neighbor or a hard neighbor? Let me tell you, I've had a peacock as a neighbor already, and it's hard because real early in the mornings or through the days, they make this loud sound. Help! Help! Sounds like someone yelling for help. It makes you wonder what's going on. Anyway, what if this guy was our neighbor? It's Larry. Larry the cucumber. How could we be? Is he easy to be a neighbor or hard? He'd probably be pretty easy. Just take him a tomato every now and then. About Larry the cable guy. Get her done. It might be kind of hard. I don't know. He looks a little crazy, maybe? I I think he's a good down-to-earth fella. Let's be a good neighbor to him. What does neighbor really mean? The house next door? The next 3 houses down from mine? Maybe my block? Everyone within my zip code? I think when Jesus talks about being your neighbor, he's kind of talking about anybody we're going to be with that day that we're going to run across. It doesn't have to be the house next door. It could be your sister or your brother. Did you hear that? Got to be nice and love your sister and your brother. Yep. Who's this? That's Elsa, isn't it? I don't know my Disney characters real well, but I suppose, I don't know, it'd probably be a pretty easy neighbor. How about Cruella de Vil? Don't let your puppy near this lady, okay? Might be a little bit harder. All I'm making the point is sometimes people are easier to love than others, but yet God directs us to love them all. Oh, look at them. Wouldn't they be great neighbors? Charlie Brown and Snoopy? That'd be awesome. That used to be my favorite childhood comic characters. And what about these guys? Calvin and Hobbes, right? Calvin would be easy to love, or would he be hard? He'd sure make some weird snowmen in your yard next door, and he'd probably be getting into trouble. He might actually be a little bit hard to be a neighbor to. Uh-oh, I can't believe I'm going here, but let's do it. What if Ryan Day was my neighbor? I'm okay, because I'm an Ohio State fan, and I think that'd be kind of cool. But of course, what if this fellow was my neighbor? Well, if I'm a Ohio State fan, I might consider that to be a bit of a burden. But you know what? The Lord doesn't care. Jesus says, love your neighbor. It doesn't say tolerate. It doesn't say ignore. So if he moved in next door, have to figure out a way to be nice and love. How about this guy? Aw, this is bashful. Bashful would probably be kind of hard to be a neighbor, wouldn't it? He's so bashful. He doesn't talk very much, kind of quiet. But I think I'd be a good neighbor. Of course, you went the other direction, and we went to this guy, Grumpy. Ooh, grumpy neighbors. Have you ever had a brother and sister that's grumpy? You remember I said your neighbor could be your brother or sister, right? Well, when they're grumpy, they're hard to love, but we got to work at it. Couple more here. Who's this? Grumpy Cat. I don't know anything about Grumpy Cat. I just saw the picture and I thought, I don't know if I want Grumpy Cat to be my neighbor, but it's kind of silly. Another cat. Cat in the Hat. Now, if the Cat in the Hat were my neighbor, I don't know. There'd be all kinds of odd trees and different, I don't know, the Who's singing from Whoville, and I don't know what all was going on there, but it'd be interesting if Cat in the Hat was my neighbor. Part of the Cat in the Hat series has this too, right? You know who this is? This is redfish. From let's see, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. I've noticed a lot these days that red and blue aren't getting along too good. But you know what? Doesn't matter. Lord says, love your neighbor. If red fish is my neighbor, love him. Blue fish is my neighbor, love him. Easy enough. What if this guy was my neighbor? Anybody know who this is? Wilson from the Home Improvement Show. He was a neighbor to Tim Taylor. He always gave great advice over the fence. I just loved that show. I think he'd make a great neighbor. A little eccentric, but a good neighbor. I think he'd be easy to love. What about this guy? Oh, we can't do a show about neighbors without having Mr. Robinson in his neighborhood, right? He would sit there and we go through the different stories together, and certainly would seem to be someone that could be a very easy neighbor to have. And I think there's a little bit where we should all kind of be like him, right? And follow his leading on that. So, end of the story. Love your neighbor, whether it is an actual neighbor, whether it's your brother or sister. Get out there, take some sort of actions of showing you care. Being a neighbor, we talked about that. We talked about what love means. Love is an action, so you have to get out there and do something. So let's reach out, have a lot of care for each person that's around us, and love our neighbor. Catch you later, guys. Appreciate it. Oh, it's time to have your snack, right? Once again, I give you permission. Go find that cookie jar, get a cookie out of there, and bring me one that's chocolate chip. That's my favorite. See you, kids. Bye.